Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Heather Nelson, vocalogist, and I am here in my home studio on a very rainy afternoon. Um, I am quite honestly very sick of the rain here in Missouri, but so you may hear some like rain falling because it's kind of like raining a lot out there right now. But I am waiting here for my friend and colleague Vicky Singer to come on, and when she does, we're going to start talking about ableism and how ableism can show up sometimes in very sneaky ways in the private voice studio. And so I would love for you to just kind of hang around for a couple of seconds until she gets in here, and then when she does, we'll be able to chat together. We are previewing a Pedagogy Happy Hour, which is coming up this Friday night. And if you are interested, I still have some spots available, so you can find a link to register for that in my bio. We are going to meet online on Zoom at 7 p.m. Central Time. So right now it's 5 o'clock Central Time, and so it'll be 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and I don't know, 5 o'clock if you're on the West Coast. Time zones are hard, but registration is $25, and if you happen to have a student who might benefit from that, you can also DM me, because I have a super secret student rate that I don't advertise, but sometimes students, especially if they're going to be teachers, could benefit from this as well. So you'll find a link to all of that in my bio, and I've posted about it a couple of times this week, and we'll post again about it later on this week. So I haven't seen Vicky yet. Let me check the time real quick. And oh, sorry if, sorry if my video paused. Okay, here we go. Sorry if my video paused. All right, so Vicky should be coming on in just a second. If I did it correctly. There, she's coming. Hi, Vicky.
Hello. I don't know why Instagram doesn't like to give me notifications when you're live.
It's probably my fault, because for some reason, like, technology just stops working when I walk into the room. I mean, it happens all the time. Like if I call the bank, if I call, the vet's office, to talk about like, computers freeze up, and it's probably all my fault. I have probably like some sort of a curse on me. Technology just does not work. So I was chatting a little bit, and I don't know if the video paused while I had to click away to answer your message. I'm just mentioning that we are previewing our webinar that's happening this Friday night at 7 p.m. We're going to talk about ableism in the private voice studio, and I'm so excited because I have learned so much just from talking with you the few times that we already have, and I know that people who come and join us will also learn a ton. So I introduced myself already before we got started. I'm Dr. Heather Nelson, vocalogist. I'm a private voice teacher and a teacher educator in Springfield, Missouri. And this is my friend and colleague, Vicky. Vicky, would you introduce yourself, please?
So my name is Vicky Singer. I currently live in St. Louis, Missouri. Heather and I were lucky enough to sing together a few years ago in Springfield Chamber Chorus. I'm a professional chorister. I chorister for a church here in St. Louis, as well as American Chamber Chorale up here. And I am disabled, which is not something you see super often in the chorister world. And so I'm really excited to be here with Heather to talk about ableism in the performing arts, and how to be better support to arts and artists and being more inclusive.
Absolutely. And I don't have a lot of data to back this up, but I would say that we probably see, and you may have a different experience than me, but we probably see a lower barrier of entry in the chorister world, in the choir world, for people with physical disabilities than we do like in music theater or even in opera. And so we definitely need to keep working on this issue so that we have the ability to bring all kinds of bodies. We have the ability. Let's actually do the thing though, to bring
Right.
all kinds of bodies into the performing world. And so one way that we can do that, I think, is by starting in the private voice studio by making our voice studios as accessible and welcoming as possible. We did this chat, we did another chat on Friday, and again, technology challenged. I actually didn't get it saved correctly or something, so our chat went away. But you mentioned that you are disabled, and so would you mind just to give just a brief little history of how you got into singing?
Sure. So my parents are both musicians. My mother is a pianist and a flautist. My dad's a trumpeter and sings bass. And growing up, it was very, very common for my parents to be around the piano and to be singing in their church choirs, and that this was just what they did. And there's my mom actually has a picture of me at age 3 where I followed her up to the platform at church while she was singing a special solo because I wanted to sing with mom. It was very important. So music has always been in my life. And, it wasn't until I really got into the standard school system, right, that I realized that people might have a problem with the way that I walked or moved and doing music. And so it was very interesting to kind of navigate that. When I was in first grade, I was in a wheelchair after a surgery, and, trying to be in music class, and, oh, you can't sit on the floor and do a circle game. Well, how do we make that work? Okay, well, you sit over here and I'm going to give you worksheets, and as it went on, I ended up in private voice lessons. I did very well, excelled in choir in high school, but never got the chance to audition for the top choirs because it was a dancing ensemble. And so I never got the chance to sing higher level literature until I went to college and until I went to Missouri State specifically, and got lucky enough to have a director who didn't care how I moved and cared a lot about what my voice could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that brings up a lot of thoughts in me because we put movement together so much with early childhood music education, which there's obviously there's a lot of benefit to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the answer, if we have someone who like you moves in a different way, the answer is not to take out the movement. The movement or the goal would, I think, be to find a way to get the movement in that works with your body.
Right. I have a friend who is ORF level 2 certified. She teaches elementary music. And we've talked a lot about this, right? ORF really wants you to put the beat in your body, right? And that you are tapping on yourself. And, maybe that's not feasible for every student, or even those who are neurodivergent, might be overstimulating. Okay, well, how do we make that level of difference? And there are teachers now who are much more aware than we were 20, 30 years ago, and there's a higher awareness of differences in music education, especially. But we don't see a lot of that carryover happening into private studios, which I think is kind of what we're saying is really, really important here, Heather,
Mhm. Absolutely. We talked Friday how singing is. Oops, my roommate just made a noise. There's lots of noise happening in my house today. So, how singing is just a fundamental part of the human experience.
Yes.
But we also, however we experience our bodies, however we move in the world, is also a part of the human experience. And
Yeah.
so the Venn diagram between how we move and how we sing is really a circle.
Absolutely.
those things we cannot, and voice education in a lot of ways has tried to kind of put all of the elements of singing into little silos, and then we just are supposed to like magically put them together when we're in the studio or when we're in performance. And I think we're also getting into a more holistic view of voice education.
Hmm.
But I really think that we have an amazing opportunity ahead of us as private voice teachers, as independent voice teachers, to really kind of lead the charge in this area and make our studios super accessible and inclusive so that we can push that forward into the academy, into
Hmm.
community theaters, into opera, all of that stuff. I think we have, as an industry, as an independent voice teacher industry, have this opportunity like ready and waiting for us right now, and we can really lead the charge.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the things we've talked about before, and if you're new to this recording, you happen to be finding this and you're going to come listen to us chat on Friday, you know, this is a really important thing for you to know. I truly believe that singing is human. And we know that the voice, our instrument, is our body. You cannot separate your voice from your body. And therefore, how you experience singing is going to be directly tied to how you move and how you breathe. We know this, especially as private voice teachers, right? Um, if you were to teach somebody, and you know, Heather, I'm using you as an example here. If you're going to teach somebody a diaphragmatic breath, right? What's the thing you normally say?
We normally say, breathe deep, get
Mhm.
that breath, like it, however it feels, get it down into your body.
Right. And like the phrase I heard a lot was breathe and expand your belly. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but how?
Right.
Because you know, for me personally, my spine is not the straightest thing, and all those muscles are tight and bound up. And it took me until I was 21 to learn how to take a diaphragmatic breath
Yeah.
straight up. It took me that long. And it took a voice teacher who literally went and found a Manhasset music stand, handed me the music stand, like hold it sideways, and was like, okay, try to take a breath while holding this. Forced
Hmm.
forced me to take a diaphragmatic breath because it took effort to sing a basic warm up line, you know, while
Hmm.
holding the thing. And it was like, oh, that's the feeling I've been looking for. And so,
Hmm.
one of the things that is incredibly important for private teachers to think about, right, is to think about learning as a collaborative experience, especially for those students who are, um, you know, who are disabled, who maybe don't know how to work with their bodies. And we kind of talked about this before, Heather, you know, okay, well, you tried this. How does it feel? How does it
Hmm.
feel in your body? Does that feel good? Does that feel bad? Does that feel different? You know, okay, if it feels bad, let's figure out a different way to try it. And I think so much of the fear, right, around teaching people who have different abilities is a fear of unknown,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
You know, and that it takes a collaborative process and it takes trust, it takes time.
Absolutely. That element of trust too, we've chatted about that before. Um, it doesn't happen usually instantaneously, particularly when we're talking about singing and we're singing
Mm-hmm.
in close quarters, usually with another person that, we see maybe once a week,
Sure.
maybe even less often than that. And, to trust someone with this very vulnerable act of singing, to be critiqued on it, honestly, um, boy, that's a very vulnerable experience. And then
Yeah.
when you add in uncertainty on both sides, because the teacher can be very uncertain how to work with someone who has a different kind of body, but also uncertainty on the student's part. Is this person safe?
Right.
Um, that can be a very understandable bridge that has to be built over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that you've mentioned before to me is that it's okay not to know all the answers. It's
Right.
okay to be a little bit afraid
Right.
even of what you're going to experience. And I want to reiterate that
Mhm.
that I'll be real honest, Vicky, if you were to walk into my studio, I would have a lot of questions,
Sure.
to how to work with you. And my teaching style is to ask a lot of questions anyway. Um, but I would need to do a lot of work on my part just to make sure that I was approaching you from a um, from from the standpoint of getting you to your real voice with whatever body you have, that your body is not a barrier to getting to your singing.
Right. And I think that number one, that would be a very fascinating experiment someday. That would be a very fascinating experiment. Um, but yeah, it's definitely, and it's different for everyone, right?
Mhm.
You know, each teacher is going to work with each student differently. You know, if my husband is a K through 12 certified music teacher, he works with me differently than, other teachers do. Partially because he knows me so well that he's like, you didn't take a diaphragmatic breath. You're not working. Lies. I know you can do better. But once again, he and I have that level of trust clearly, you know,
Mhm.
and it takes time to build that. And I think one of the important things for teachers to remember, like you said, is that you're not going to know everything. But also, there are questions you can ask. And one of the questions that I consistently give to people, right, and this is kind of an intake question, when, say, you've got a new student coming in, and you're going to ask them, what, if any, accessibility needs do you have? Now, don't be surprised if the student doesn't know, or is like, yes, I have them, but I'm not sure what they're going to be. It is okay for that to be a collaborative process, you know.
Your sound got really quiet for me, and I'm not sure if that's just my phone or if that's you, or something else.
Sorry.
Again, technology. Me. I don't know.
I don't know. Can you hear me better
Yeah,
now?
I got a random phone call that popped up too while you were talking, so sorry about
Oh,
that.
okay.
So one uh, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot as I've just been kind of mentally preparing for our talk on Friday is how even as an able-bodied teacher, I tend to have a lot of hang-ups about my body.
Sure.
Just being a woman walking in the world, that tends to be something that just happens.
Sure.
And I am constantly thinking of how I am, probably for a lot of wrong reasons, but it's just the way that it is. I'm thinking a lot about how my body holds me back, you know,
Sure.
whether it be hormones, hormones can
Hmm.
mess up your voice.
Yeah.
Whether it be, how I don't, whether maybe I'm not comfortable with how I look on stage. There's a lot of talk
Mhm.
happening right now about body shape
Yeah.
on stage and body size on stage. But one of the things that I want to be very careful with when I'm considering working with someone who has a physical disability,
Hmm.
if I get that opportunity, is not to assume that they have similar hangups about their body
Hmm.
and that their body is something to overcome
Sure.
to get to them to a point where they're singing efficiently.
Sure.
Our bodies can be an asset to us, and they are an
Hmm.
asset to us. Like you mentioned, our bodies, our instrument is housed into our bodies, and
Hmm.
so our bodies are really an asset to us if we can get some of that mental stuff swept away. And
Absolutely.
so, um, I'm just, does that resonate with you, or have you
Sure.
seen any of that kind of thinking coming up in your experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, I love Ali Stroker, who is a fantastic mezzo she was Ado Annie in the most recent revival of Oklahoma on Broadway, and she's a wheelchair user. If she has hangups about her body, she is confident enough that she is very clear that her body and her voice is the way it is and she's proud of it. now. And, I think that is so fantastic to see, that role modeling. She actually won a Tony for her performance. She's incredible. I personally have some of those hangups, but I didn't when I was younger, right? I didn't care that I was in a wheelchair. I didn't care that, I walked differently. I cared that I got to sing with other people. Of course, one of the failing points of getting older is that I'm far more aware of when people notice me now. And it makes me nervous. But at the same time, there are plenty of people, especially in the disabled community, who know that, like, this is my body, this is how it works, these are the assistive devices I need, and I'm not ashamed of needing them. And I think it can be fairly clear, not always, but it can be fairly clear by the first few interactions how the person feels about it. You'll be able to tell by body language or how they speak about their disability, or, if they are in a wheelchair or if they are using crutches or whatever, or how confidently perhaps, I know I've walked into a voice lesson studio and done the, hello, I need a chair today. I can't stand today, and, part of that's trust again, right? I know you're not going to judge me for needing this thing, therefore I'm going to need this thing.
Mm-hmm. I just want to briefly mention, if in case people have joined us a little bit later, that we're gonna talk about this more in depth on Friday for Pedagogy Happy Hour. And once I get this video posted correctly this time, I hope, I'll have a link to register for that, because we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to talk about, and we're going to get into, I think, we still have to kind of figure out our outline, what we're going to do on Friday, but I think we're going to get a little bit more in depth into just like what ableism is and how it really can show up, and defining it well, which we haven't done too much today, but we're definitely going to get into that on Friday. Just to kind of start wrapping up here, I have a lesson I have to teach at 6, and so I've got to get ready for that. But
it is my husband's 30th birthday, so here in a few I've got to go make birthday cake. So
just to kind of to finish up and
sure.
And give us a couple of things to think about, in case someone chooses not to join us on Friday, which I think they definitely should.
Right.
But what would be, do you think, from your perspective as a highly skilled singer that has had to, kind of work through the systems, as it were, what are a couple of things that you would love for particularly independent teachers to really put at the forefront of their minds when they are starting to even think about the possibility of having disabled clients in their studios?
Sure. First thing is to acknowledge that you're scared and do it anyway. And that means, some of the basics, right? And Heather's been talking about this in blog posts and doing a beautiful job. Putting imagery of students who have different abilities in your website, making sure that your words, when you were talking about students and what have you, are you're making sure to use inclusive language, and you can search ability inclusive language on Google, and there are multiple resources out there for that type of thing. I think it's also really important, and I'm not really sure I've addressed this yet, to understand what ableism is. And ableism is defined as, basically harm to those with disabilities. And that can be by actions or words or by exclusion. And taking the time to acknowledge that, right? And I mean, I know that people think this, and this is human. I want to acknowledge that this is human. It is very common to see somebody, using implements or who walk like I do. I mean, for those of you who don't know me, it is very visible when I move that there's something up. And a lot of people will have that first thought of like, oh, she's different. What's she doing here? Can she actually sing? And challenging those first thoughts, right? Because the first thought isn't what makes you who you are or how you're going to approach a student. It's how you reframe it. It's how you take the time to go, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we take the time to learn together, because I truly believe that anyone can sing, right? It is human language. It is absolutely human language. So to take the time to start challenging some of that, because there can be so much shame around seeing people as different, right? And Heather, I'm not sure I'm wording this well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you're so correct. But a couple of points I know that like I need to do some work on my website. I need to make sure that that my website is not only like, hey, I'm open to teaching people with all kinds of abilities, but I'm actively inviting
Mm-hmm.
people with all kinds of abilities
Mm-hmm.
to come and work with me. I mean, the reality is uh, there's I have yet to meet a singer that perfectly matches the pedagogy textbooks.
Right.
Even
Right.
even if they're completely able-bodied, haven't met that person that they put the drawing of in the textbooks yet.
Nope.
And so we have to do all kinds of adapting
Mm-hmm.
and tweaking of our pedagogy knowledge to fit all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of bodies anyway. And so working with those with physical disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
um, probably honestly is not going to be too terribly different from what we're already doing with a lot of students,
Right.
with a few exceptions. We just have to figure out how to work with that body and be collaborative, like you mentioned.
Right.
And then absolutely just taking that issue of shame head on,
Mm-hmm.
because it is insidious
It
and
is.
it can be very sneaky when and it can mask itself as a lot of other things too.
Mm-hmm.
We may um, it could show up as insecurity or even anger, and
Yeah.
so being able to handle just um, point out that shame and try to take its power away if we can.
Call it out for what it is. And I think that private voice teachers have such a gift in being able to work with people, right? That you have the time and the space and the building of trust to be collaborative and to empower your students, right? To believe in themselves, to utilize their voices, and to believe that they can join in this expression of human language. I started private voice lessons when I was 14. I have been in private voice off and on for over 10 years at this point. Without my private voice teachers, I would not be the singer I am today. I would not. I would not have had the belief that I could actually sing opera, that I could sing arias, that I could sing difficult music because, you know, and not to anybody's shame here, right? This is no shame. Music educators in schools do not have time to do this level of breakdown. But my private voice teachers did. And they were able to empower me to the point where I am still singing today in multiple ensembles.
Right. And yeah, I just want to say that again. Like, we do not want to shame any private teachers at all. We want to
No.
educate and empower. And, well, I mean, frankly, let's change the world. Why not, while we're at
Yeah.
it? But, you know, and so, what's in the past has been in the past. We can
Mm-hmm.
definitely change our behavior moving forward.
Yeah.
So, I need to run and get ready for my lesson that's coming up in half an hour. So So I make sure that I am prepared to meet them. But thank you again for joining me, Vicky, and
Thank you.
I am so looking forward to our chat on Friday.
Same.
And I know that uh, we haven't said it explicitly here, but I want to say it just so that we are very, very clear that
Hmm.
there will, you and I will chat during that
Hmm.
time, but it's also going to be a time where people can ask
Yeah.
questions and in a non-judgmental way. Of course, we want people to,
Hmm.
of course, be polite and all of that stuff, but this is a time that if you've got questions, come and ask them. And if we don't have the answers, chances are we know where to look to find them.
Hmm.
But um, it can be difficult to ask questions um, in sometimes in the online forums or stuff like
Sure.
that, because you can get a lot of judgment thrown at you.
Yeah.
And I'll speak for Vicky and for myself that
Hmm.
we will not throw any shade or any judgment at you for asking an honest question.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you just have um, even hypotheticals or whatever to throw out, we can definitely help think through some of that with you. And
Right.
that would be something I think we would love to be able to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And once again, all in the name of breaking down shame around this and empowering your students and empowering you to be able to create music together, because that's why we do what we do.
Yes, absolutely. So join us Friday night, 7 p.m.
Yes.
at Central Time, and you can find out information on that. There's a link in my bio for that, and it'll be on my feed as well. And I really hope that we have a lot of people come and join us.
Yeah.
I know that there are still spots left to register. I do have a cap on it that just for to keep things from going nuts. But so if you run into trouble with that, DM me and I can definitely help you get into the event. So
Absolutely.
anyway, thank you again, Vicky, for joining me.
Thank you.
I had a great time chatting with you today, and
And
I will see you on Friday.
see you soon. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.